proud to be controlled. If a slave can be convinced that he should be a slave, that his enslavement is both proper and legitimate, that he is the rightful property of his master, and that he has an obligation to produce as much as possible for his master, then he does not need to be physically oppressed. In other words, enslaving the mind makes enslaving the body unnecessary. And that is exactly what the belief in authority does. It teaches people that it is morally virtuous that they surrender their time, effort, and property, as well as their freedom and control over their own lives, to a ruling class. Many people express pride in being law abiding taxpayers, which means only that they do what the politicians tell them to do and give the politicians money. When confronted with the idea that it is wrong for them to be forcibly deprived of the fruits of their labor, even if it is done legally, such people often vehemently defend those who continue to rob them, insisting that such robbery is essential to human civilization. Of course, they do not use the term robbery to describe the situation, though they are well aware of what would be done if they refused to pay taxes. Likewise, when one person objects to the level of taxation or other forcible control being inflicted upon him by those in government, others who are also being oppressed will often condemn the one who is objecting, telling them that if he does not like how he is being treated, he should leave the country. Maligning a fellow victim of coercion for complaining about it is a sure sign that a person actually takes pride in his own enslavement. Frederick Douglass, a former slave, witnessed and described that exact phenomenon among his fellow slaves, many of whom were proud of how hard they worked for their masters and how faithfully they did as they were told. From their perspective, a runaway slave was a shameful thief, having stolen himself from his master. Douglass described how thoroughly indoctrinated many slaves were, to the point where they truly believed that their own enslavement was just and righteous. I have found that to make a contented slave, it is necessary to make a thoughtless one. It is necessary to darken his moral and mental vision, and as far as possible, to alienate the power of reason. He must be able to detect no inconsistencies in slavery. He must be made to feel that slavery is right, and he can be brought to that only when he ceases to be a man. Though slavery is no longer practiced openly, the mentality of loyal subservience remains. Most people today detect no inconsistencies in allowing a ruling class to forcibly extort and control everyone else, and in fact feel that such extortion and oppression is right, to the point where many feel actual shame if they are caught keeping what they earn and running their own lives. It is one thing to feel shame at having been caught stealing or defrauding or committing aggression, but it is quite another for someone to feel shame about having done something which, if not for the politician decrees, laws, he would have seen as perfectly permissible. Such shame does not come from the immorality of the act itself. It comes from the imagined morality of disobeying authority, i.e., breaking the law. When, for example, the average citizen is caught cheating on his taxes, or not having a registration sticker on his car, or smoking marijuana, or doing any one of the thousand other things which does not constitute aggression against anyone else, but which have nonetheless been declared illegal by the ruling class, there's usually some feeling of guilt in the person's own mind. Without a feeling of being obligated to obey, being caught and punished by agents of government would be regarded in the same way that being bitten by a dog would be regarded as unpleasant consequence to be avoided, but having no moral element to it at all. Instead, most people feel, at least to some extent, that being caught committing a victimless crime indicates some sort of moral failing on themselves because they did not do as they were told. The desire to have the approval of authority is extremely powerful in almost everyone to a degree they themselves do not even realize. The ubiquitous message of authoritarianism has a psychological impact far deeper than most people imagine, as the Milgram experiments demonstrated. Nearly everyone experiences dramatic emotional stress and discomfort anytime he comes into conflict with authority, and will go to great lengths no matter what acts of evil he must commit in order to earn the approval of his masters. Even the terminology people use illustrates how effectively they have been trained to feel morally obligated to obey authority. This can be seen in such a simple phrase as, "You're not allowed to do that," or even, "You can't do that," when referring to some behavior that has been declared illegal by the ruling class. Such phrases do not simply express a potential adverse consequence, but also imply that some act has been forbidden by masters. Committing that act is bad, not allowable, or even impossible. You can't do that? Looking at the statistical facts demonstrates the power of the belief in authority. In the United States, about 100,000 IRS employees extort about 200 million victims. Those being robbed outnumber the robbers by about 2,000 to 1. This could never be accomplished by brute force alone. It continues only because most of those being robbed feel a duty to be robbed and imagine such robberies to be legitimate and valid. The same is true of many other laws which are generally obeyed, even though the enforcers always hugely out are always hugely outnumbered by those who seek to control. The high levels of compliance do not come so much from the fear of punishment as from the feeling among those being controlled that they have a moral obligation to cooperate with their own subjugation.